Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, the two cows and the llama down the street, and Jimmy in Topeka, Kansas. Welcome to another edition of the Root of All Stuff.
Yes, welcome to the root of all stuff, guys. Who did you introduce there? A llama?
Yeah, two cows and a llama down the street.
All right, all right.
They're faithful listeners,
Strange audience we have, but
so they don't have a choice.
all right, guys. Welcome back. The last episode, me and Josh bantered some questions back and forth, and that went well, I think. I hadn't heard a lot of hatred in the old email or voicemails or Facebook, so hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Um But sometimes you have questions that are just way too deep to cover or give a solid short answer to. Um, and we hit a few of those last time. So we're going to try to hit on one of those questions this evening. And I believe the question was, how much freedom should people be allowed to have? Now, that is a
That's
deep
a
topic.
doozy.
That's a big one. So, Josh, you want to start this thing off?
Yeah, I'll start it off. And this has been a question that has pretty much gone on since the dawn of damn time. How much freedom should people be allowed to have?
Yeah.
Should they be allowed to have total and complete freedom, or should they be governed by a free set of rulings or laws or judgments or this or that or the other?
Right.
What makes up freedom?
Right. And see, that's just it. In order to answer that question, you have an inherent problem, which is how do you define the word freedom? Now, there's multiple definitions, which is problematic to start with. Three of those being the first one being the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. Not a bad definition of freedom. It works.
Right.
Another would be the absence of subjection to foreign domination or despotic government. Okay, so like America, when we had the revolution to separate from England, to get out of their despotic government over us. Another definition of freedom is the state of not being imprisoned or enslaved, plain and simple.
Right.
Now, while all of those will work and are fitting definitions of freedom, they are all very different and they can all also be taken or interpreted different ways. And those are not the only definitions of freedom out there. Some people can define freedom totally differently and still be accurate. So we're dealing with a problem right off the beginning. So, Josh, what do you think? What do you think about freedom?
Oh, well, I think that there is no universal definition of the word freedom. Freedom is a subjective term.
I agree.
Uh, there are many true definitions of freedom, but
Sure.
they're all different. There's no all encompassing,
Right.
all knowing, all seeing definition of freedom.
Right. I would agree with that. I would say some of them even have objective truths about them. However, freedom in and of itself as a word is highly subjective. And interpretations of it and definitions can be subjective, even though they attribute to objective things.
Right.
So,
Let me take for example the freedom of speech.
yeah, yeah, that's
Freedom of speech
perfect.
is a wonderful thing.
Yeah,
But if a man goes on the radio or national television and says, "I'm going to kill the president,"
right. There's a problem.
there's a problem. You're going to be getting a knock on the door. Now, is that truly freedom of speech if you can't say certain things?
Well, some people would say yes, and some people would say no. So who's right? Who's wrong? Now it
Subjective.
depends on your definition of freedom. You see, so it's highly subjective. Um, now that's just it. So here in the U.S., our United States Constitution lays out how the government was supposed to work, or is supposed to work. And of course, we also have amended that original, I believe, 27 times. Let me see, I actually have it here. Let me take a look. Yeah. So 6 articles was the original. And we have 27 amendments currently that I know of. This, I don't know how old this copy is or when the last amendment was made. That's something to look into. But again, all right. So I believe you were referring to the First Amendment there, correct?
Yes.
Which, for those of you who do not know, the Bill of Rights is the first 10 amendments. The First Amendment, which is also, by the way, not the original Constitution. This is the first change of the original Constitution that we did as a country. Amendment 1 says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. Okay, now that seems pretty cut and clear there, what they had in mind. Now, of course, in the Constitution, as far as how our founding fathers wrote it, was kind of vague in certain places, and that wasn't on accident. That was on purpose, because they had hopes that we would perfect it as we went on. I mean, and a perfect evidence is that is simply the preamble to the Constitution. If you've never read it, it starts out, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." That's the preamble. So, granted, in order to form a more perfect union, meaning, I don't know if perfection, as far as freedom, is something that is an objective, obtainable goal, but they were trying to get as close to it as we could. Now, since then, like Josh was saying, we have had some interactions that didn't quite flow with that still seemed strange. But we did it. There were certain laws or rulings, say by the Supreme Court, that people felt didn't necessarily go hand in hand with that, and they might not have. However, they were done with intentions of protection or keeping people more free in their thoughts. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
So, let's see. Freedom of speech may not be recognized as absolute. And as Josh has already given us an example of, you go out and start, making threats against people. That's one of the problems. You can't threaten people because that is actually against the law. Now, people might wonder, how did they make that against the law when it's in the Constitution that you can say whatever you want? Well, because words, much like actions, have consequences. Would you agree with that?
I would. I very much would. It doesn't take much to start any kind of movement, and words, a lot of times, are more powerful than deeds.
Most definitely. Most definitely. For example, we have limits to our freedoms of speech, such as libel, slander, obscenity, sedition, incitement, fighting words or threats. Food labeling. Now, because this also deals with writing as far as speech goes. Like, we have to have our food labeled a certain way from the according to the FDA. So they have to let you know what's in there so you don't eat something and not know it.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people have a problem with GMOs, although I personally do not because I understand them. But for people who do, that's not a problem. Fine, you do you. You're free to do that. But that's just those are just a few of the examples of the limits that we have on freedom of speech. Josh, what else you got? Can you think of any other thing in that First Amendment that we have limits on now?
Well, freedom to peaceably assemble.
Okay, we still have that freedom.
We do.
As long as it's peaceably. That seems to be the problem people run into. It doesn't give you the right to to start rioting and acting like an asshole. It gives you the right to peaceably assemble.
It does not take much.
Correct. Emotions are things that sometimes make you do things or act a certain way that you wouldn't normally do or act.
Yeah. And a lot of times the words freedom and liberty are used together, and they're used interchangeably, but they are not the same thing. You had mentioned earlier that freedom, one of the definitions of freedom was the ability to act or change without constraint, without a limiting factor.
Well, that was close. My definition of it was the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. So, yeah, pretty much along those lines.
The definition of liberty is to do as one pleases, regardless.
Okay. Now, can that not be taken, though, as a definition of freedom?
It can. It can. Like we said.
So then are they not, in fact, interchangeable?
They can be, but it's subjective.
Right. That's my key point. It is very subjective. A lot of people, especially in Western culture, seem to think that freedom is this objective thing, that it is real, like it's an objective thing. And they don't realize that it's just a really strong belief they hold that it is, not necessarily shared by everyone else, which hinders their freedom. It's a bit of a paradox in freedom. See?
You cannot touch it. It's not a physical thing.
Right.
It's a state of mind or being.
And you had told me before the show you read a article by Wendy Chun on this on Wiki.
I did.
And you were telling me somewhere in there she mentions freedom as far as physics or a mathematical term.
Yeah. It says freedom I gotta find it again. There it is. Well, shit. Lost it.
It's all right. Take your time, my man. In the meantime, what Josh read to me out of this article earlier, it made me think a little bit. Because this
person has the freedom to do
things. Do what?
Go ahead.
I was saying when you were telling me about it earlier, it sounded to me like this author was speaking of freedom as an objective thing, like I was just mentioning, as if she views it as an objective. And understandably, freedom definitely can talk about things that are objective or have objective truths about them in their definitions. But freedom in and of itself is highly subjective. All right, I'm sorry. That's all I want to say. Go ahead.
Very good. She says liberty is linked to human subjectivity, and freedom is not. The Declaration of Independence, for example, describes men as having liberty and the nation as being free. But free will, which is the quality of being free from the control or fate of necessity, may first have been attributed to human will, but in Newtonian physics, freedom is attributed to degrees of freedom in free bodies to objects. She goes on to say that freedom differs from liberty as control differs from discipline. Liberty, like discipline, is linked to institutions and political parties, whether liberal or libertarian. Freedom is not. Although freedom can work for or against institutions, it is not bound to them. It travels through unofficial networks. To have liberty is to be liberated from something. To be free is to be self-determining or autonomous.
Okay.
Freedom can or cannot exist within a state of liberty. One can be liberated yet unfree, or free yet enslaved.
Huh. Now, interestingly, sorry, I've got a lot of people that cannot be quiet while I'm doing this. All right. So I was trying to listen to you while I was being super distracted. It sounds to me though like she's pointing out her definition of freedom and like blending it into this. Now, like I spoke of before. All right, and she mentioned the Declaration of Independence. I have a copy of that right here, and it does. And then she wanted to point out that the difference in the definition of this freedom versus like the freedom used in Newtonian physics and mathematics and physics and engineering, basically, which is, my highlight. Now that is true. Physics and Newtonian physics, especially when they talk about freedom of a body, unless acted upon by an outside force, so say like Newton's laws, right? This is true until it's acted upon by an outside force. Well, sure, that's true. That's an objective point. But here's the thing: everything within the known universe is acted upon at some point by an outside force, eventually, and at all times, because everything in the known universe is affected in some way, or has an effect of some kind of space-time, which we all live in, and the curvature of space-time that Einstein later referred to as gravitation or gravity. So that would be my argument, as how that is a subjective term of freedom. If you were using it that way, it's still a subjective idea, freedom, the term. Now the use of it there points to objective truths, like I talked about earlier. Freedom, when people say things or define freedom in different ways, freedom, the word, can point to objective truths, but the word in and of itself is highly subjective, because that freedom doesn't at all relate to like the last definition I gave, the state of not being imprisoned or enslaved by people. Does that make sense? In civilization. So freedom is still a highly subjective term. So that would be my argument to her article. She's looking at it as if it were highly subjective. Oh, we might have lost Josh there. He's back. He's muted.
He's back.
Oh, what happened there, man?
What the hell was that?
I do not know. You let me know.
I don't know.
You went off and came back on.
You were lagging like crazy, and then poof.
Oh, was I lagging?
Bad.
That's not good. What did you hear? Good Lord.
Your audio cut out right before the video. I'm not 100%.
You don't know what the last thing you heard was?
Mm.
All right, so let's get back to it. So freedom is highly subjective, in my opinion. Did you catch what I said about her usage of Newtonian physics before I started lagging? All right.
I did.
And did you catch my argument to it?
I think that's where you started.
Okay. So my argument to it is simply that when she speaks of freedom being acted, or as far as Newtonian physics, she's talking about a body being free until acted upon by an outside force. This is true, but everything and all bodies are acted upon by outside forces such as space and time, and the curvature of space and time, otherwise known as gravitation, as pointed out by Einstein. So again, truth, or not truth, freedom rather, is highly subjective in that way. It can point to objective truths, but as far as the term freedom, the way it's used is just different. Like that definition of freedom does not coincide with the definition of the state of being free, or the state of not being imprisoned or enslaved. That has nothing to do with physics at all, right? It's totally different, but it still uses the term freedom. So it's highly subjective to the person interpreting it, which definition they're using for what. It's highly subjective. That's my argument to that.
I agree.
All right. Let's see. What else do we have here? Freedom of religion. That was another one mentioned in the First Amendment there. Now, the Supreme Court declared that the First Amendment would not protect the practice of human sacrifice, even if some religion required it. And that was in the Supreme Court case of Reynolds versus the U.S. in 1878. Now we look back in the Constitution, and the First Amendment said, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, you see, that seems to be in a bit of conflict. However, I do happen to agree with the Supreme Court ruling on that one. Self-sacrifice, not a good thing. Maybe pick another religion.
Maybe. I'd have to agree with that too. They're trying to protect people.
Right. And they're trying to keep people from literally removing freedoms from others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here's another little tidbit since we're talking about freedom of religion. Read that again.
I'm sorry, you went robot there for just a second. Read what again?
Read the article on the freedom of religion again.
Let's see. About the Supreme Court ruling on it. Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. The Supreme Court declared that the First Amendment would not protect the practice of human sacrifice, even if some religion required it.
Okay. But the First Amendment says that they can't impede on any religion or any practice of religion.
Right. The First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof.
Would free exercise? Okay, well, let's take.
And that's where you're going in your head right now is probably exactly where they went with that ruling. Go ahead.
Let's take Islam for example.
Okay.
According to the First Amendment, they cannot impede on the practice of Islam.
Right. Nor
should they. However, the Supreme Court did rule that there could be no mosque built on the grounds of the World Trade Center.
Sure. or any
Now,
other
would that,
religious establishment for that matter.
exactly. But would that not, in principle, be an impingement of that?
No, not necessarily. Simply because it wasn't just Islam; it was all religions, and no religion owns the property. The government owns that property, and it's not for sale. And that's pretty much what they tell them. No, you can't build it here because we own it and we don't want it here.
Right. Now, to play devil's advocate on that,
Go ahead.
I'm of the same viewpoint that you are. I don't believe that any religious site should be built there
Right,
because it's not just one religion.
right. And that's just it. There was thousands of people that unfortunately lost their lives on 9/11, especially at the World Trade Center there. Um, and we don't know specifically what religions they all were, or if we do, I guarantee they weren't all exactly the same. So we shouldn't build one religious shrine or church or synagogue or whatever on there to try to cover the basis of all of them. We should have respect for everyone who lost their life there.
Exactly.
Um,
Okay.
now, now there are also laws. Now, see, but that's just it. The interpretation of that. You see, that's just the way we're interpreting it. That's why it's so subjective, and people listening may disagree, and that's fine. That's fine. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. No one's entitled to their own facts. But what we're talking about here is very subjective, meaning even though we can point to objective truths that freedom points to, as far as the term itself, it can be interpreted very differently. And I think that's where we run into some big problems politically in this country.
Agree.
And certain laws have been viewed as taking freedoms away. And some of them I would happen to agree with. Like some people might look at the laws we've mentioned so far and been like, wait a minute. The First Amendment says you have freedom of speech and religion and all this. But they just said the Supreme Court made some ruling against that and they said they shouldn't do that. And they're not wrong with that completely. Anyway, now they're wrong if they think anything that they think that the losing argument in that was the right argument. Simply because, one, if you think it's okay for people just to truly be free of speech and be able to say whatever the hell they want, remember what I told you. Words, like actions, have consequences. I don't think anybody who has a brain in their skull, anyway, wants someone coming over and just cussing their kid out. Like let's say you have kids like I do, like young kids. Some neighbor who's drunk or disorderly and losing his mind coming over there and full on threatening and cussing at your children, and for him just to be fine with that. There should be no rules against that whatsoever. If you're of that train of thought, then you're wrong, and that's my opinion. And you can disagree. You would just be wrong.
Yeah, I don't.
What do you think, Josh? Do you think we should have some limitations on some of this, as
I
we
do.
do, as we
I
do?
do. I really do. Um, I believe that we live in one of the freest nations on earth
I agree.
in terms of the things we enjoy and the things we can do without repercussion. But there are limits, as there are limits to everything. Um, but as in terms of free, you could be in another country, walk outside on a Friday with a red T-shirt on, and be executed in the street
Yeah,
because that's against the rules.
yeah. But
You know,
see, and now see, there's two turns to there's two sides to this coin. You got one view, and strangely, both have a truth in them, but the perspective isn't the same. Okay, so you have one that says laws, or like the Bill of Rights. They're saying we should have the right to express ourselves and speak and worship whatever gods we want. And that's true. That's true. And then you have certain laws that prohibit certain things with that, like human sacrifice or communicating threats or libel and slander. And again, those are there so that you don't then have the freedom to impinge on other people's freedoms with those actions.
Right.
Does that make sense? So a good example of that is people giving up certain freedoms for securities. Now, some people have a problem with this. They're like, well, we used to be so free and now we can't. Right. Well, and to some extent, I agree with that just a little bit, but not completely. And here's why. Let's look at the USA Patriot Act signed into law in 2001 by President Bush. The law was meant to deter terrorism or acts thereof in the U.S. However, it led to people letting some freedoms go to feel safer. Meaning, like, you remember, we started the what is it, ATS at the airports. TSA. That's
the one.
And people are like, oh, no, I'm not free just to get on the airplane without being checked. Yeah, that's how they got into those planes to fly them into those buildings. Now, granted, did they go too far with that? Probably, yeah. Because it's been shown how the TSA has been pretty incompetent at that job, and maybe people let go of a little too much freedom there. So I don't necessarily agree with the extent it has gone to as far as sacrificing our freedoms in certain ways. But while I do adhere to the thought that we couldn't do nothing because we want to, we want to be as safe as possible and keep as many people safe as possible so they can be as free as possible. So, I mean, if we just sat on our hands, what's to stop someone from doing it again? Nothing. And I get that argument. However, there's an extent to everything. And the extent that we go to sometimes, I think, is way too far. So, that is my opinion there. So,
I agree with that. Let's see. I got a question for you.
Okay, what you got?
Do you think that there will ever be a true freedom, total and complete freedom in a group?
Oh, hold on. So, I need you to be a little more clear with this. Define the freedom you're talking about, of which you speak. Like, how are you defining freedom here?
Complete freedom, no laws, anarchy.
Yeah, that's how I would define it. Anarchy,
for lack of a better word. Now, if, let's say that, let's use the United States for an example.
Okay.
Let us say that one day we all wake up, the government's dissolved, there are no more laws, there are no more enforcements to any laws. How could we make that work?
You don't. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
No.
It could never work.
No.
I agree.
No.
I agree.
Human nature is such that will not work. At least not. And all right, so there's what I call a freedom paradox. I kind of think I briefly touched on it earlier. So I wrote an essay that I sent you. I think you have it. And I believe in it. And for those of you listening, I'll post that on Blogger at some point on our blog page. But freedom, if you were free in the definition of the word that Josh was using, where there are no rules, no laws, complete anarchy, then there is also nothing stopping anyone else from anything, meaning there are no rules or no laws for anyone, right? So there is literally nothing from stopping someone else or you from impinging on each other's freedoms. Meaning, yeah, you're free to do whatever you want, but so is everyone else. So let's say there's no law against murder. Okay. All right. So one, there's going to be a lot more murders because there's no consequence, and that's basically what the law is in a lot of in principle, or at least one aspect of the law is a deterrent from doing certain things, right? So, like the consequences of breaking the law is usually prison or fines or something like that, which is meant to be a deterrent from doing that, right? So, let's say there's no law against murder, like I said. All right, someone comes down the road, might be a guy that you talk to every now and again. You're not exactly friends, just acquaintances, but no problems. And all of a sudden, you decide he doesn't need to live anymore because he said something you didn't like in your conversation. So you just pull out a gun and shoot him in the head and kill him dead on the spot. I'm pretty sure you just impinged upon all of his freedoms, especially like life, the pursuit of happiness, and all of that, freedoms and liberties. You got rid of all of those in one fell swoop there, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Let's say he gets pissed at you and, puts a damn bullet in your dome and, fucks you up. I'm pretty sure he just impinged on your freedoms, didn't he? So,
Yeah.
so that's why I would say that will never work. That does not work. And
So in a nutshell, your
basically,
paradox is
okay,
that giving people more freedom somehow makes them less free.
correct. That's exactly how freedom is paradoxical. Somehow giving them more freedom tends to make people less free. Not always, though. But if we're defining freedom as exactly that, the anarchical type of freedom where there are no consequences or hindrance for anything you say or do, no laws, rules, or whatsoever. Yeah, that's anarchy, and that's literally that that's more why civilization started in the first place. People had guidelines and rules set up and started working together instead of for themselves all the time because they realized it was more beneficial to them actually than trying to do everything themselves, right? And there were also it was also more beneficial to them that other people be free because it somehow made them more free at the same time, right? Like, and it was by taking away certain freedoms that made them more free. Does that make sense? Like, whenever we came up with the law that hey, you know what? It's now against the law to kill people. I'm pretty sure most of society was like, yeah, we can get on board with that, seeing as how I don't want anybody to kill me. It's not exactly, beneficial.
Right.
So that's how I would determine it. Yeah. On that essay, do you still have that?
I do.
Is there anything I hadn't really went over it with you? Is there anything in there that you have any questions about or anything? Is there anything in it? I think I have a copy of it somewhere. This essay that I wrote. Like I say, I'll put it up on Blogger, and you guys can leave comments there on Facebook or on our phone number. Don't forget.
I do have to agree with your view on the extent of freedom in America.
Okay.
Given the extent of freedom in America is given for of and by the people.
Supposed to be.
Supposed to be. It there are issues with that,
Mm-hmm.
but there are issues with any form of government. You know, the laws that we have, also that you wrote, are not necessarily a loss of freedom as much as a deterrent for the impingement upon other people's freedoms.
Right, like I was discussing. Yeah.
No, that's like, and there's no perfect government. There's no perfect, and our justice system's flawed. Uh, it's come a long way, and is it perfect? No, but it's what we have. and it's a damn sight
But
better
it is
than.
much, much more perfect today than it has ever been in its history. And I believe that's exactly what the founding fathers in the Constitution there were shooting at when they discuss in the preamble a more perfect union. Because I don't know, again, I don't know if you could ever have a perfect union, but a more perfect union, that's something we should all strive for.
I agree. I agree.
Anything else in there?
Um, not that I can tell.
Mm. Let's see. I gave it to someone else that gave me some notes on it. Um, let's see. What else did I write? It's been a bit since I wrote that.
Oh, by
Oh,
the way,
yeah.
do you know somebody who I would have loved to have on this show for this episode?
Who's that?
It's the late Rush Limbaugh. That would have been amazing.
um,
God rest his soul. That's all
now,
I'm gonna say on that.
yeah. Let me be clear here. I don't wish ill or death or sickness upon anyone. Just because I may happen to disagree with them on damn near everything, they still don't deserve to die. And my condolences to his family and friends. That's all I'll say on that. But as far as his work and his radio and television presence and whatever political presence in general, personally, I didn't agree with most of what
Nah,
he said. And he was,
but you can't
definitely
take away.
definitely of a different train of thought than I am. That is for sure.
You
He
can't take it away. It would have definitely been an interesting show.
yeah. I'm trying to be as nice as I can here because I'm not trying to speak ill of the dead or whatever. But
Yeah,
all right,
different train of thought.
not him. All right, here, not him as a person, but fuck his thoughts. All right, but other than that, no ill will. No ill will. He might have been a good man. Personally, I don't know. I didn't know him. I never met him in my life. Like I say my condolences to everybody who liked him and his friends and family on his death. That sucks, but it is on all of our to-do lists. As much as I hate to remind everyone of it, we are all gonna die, and that sucks, but it's part of life. And that's all I'm gonna say on Rush. I knew you were gonna bring that up somehow. I knew you were gonna come into that,
Look,
but
man,
that's all right.
it's part of my
That,
charm.
that's what we do here. We get to the root of stuff. But
That's
yeah,
right.
now I know there's a lot of people out there like, fuck you, I love Rush Limbaugh, whatever. Fine,
That's
fine.
fine.
You're entitled to your opinion to like him. That's fine. It's just my opinion that I don't. And if you hate me because we don't agree, then I don't really care. Like it's your problem, man. Sure. Like I don't hate you. I don't know why you hate me. We can talk about it. Call us up. Shoot
Well,
us an email. Josh, how can I get a hold of us? Do you know?
they can get a hold of us on Facebook at the Root of All Stuff. That's our page. They can also get a hold of us at Gmail at the Root of All Stuff. That's one word at gmail.com. And introducing, ladies and gentlemen, this is a new thing that we have this week. We have a call-in line for the
Oh
show,
yeah, the root line.
the Root Line, and that number is 980-355-9137.
That's right. You can call, leave us a voicemail. You can also text that number and get a hold of us and leave your thoughts, comments, or even call in. And I think I'm gonna put up for our scheduling on our next show on the Facebook site, on our Facebook page, what time we're going to do our recording next time, and you can call into the show during that time, and we'll see what's going on. Yeah,
Sounds good.
see what happens there, and maybe nobody will call in which case, don't be scared, y'all. Don't be scared. Get in contact with us. All right, but all right. So now that I pissed half the crowd off with Rush Limbaugh,
Oh, that's all right.
that's
You
all
knew
right.
it was going to happen.
Look. I think I did pretty well there, not getting too political. All right, and
I
you
agree.
can disagree with that. You know, it's not my intention to get political on that. All right, I didn't bring it up. Someone else did.
That's all right. That's me, ladies and gentlemen. This guy right here.
That's all right. That's all right. Like I say, we're not hesitant to talk about anything. But at the same time, I understand not everyone will always agree with us, and that's not everyone's cup of tea, and that's fine. But remember, we have all these outlets for you to get in contact with us to tell us just that, or to come on the show and debate it out with us. We are open to that. We will talk to you. We
Oh
we
hell yeah!
we will not hate you or be mean to you just because we may disagree with you. Now, will we change our minds? Maybe. We are actually open minded. If you have anything, that any evidence to back up any claims you make, or you have a strong argument, my mind's open to change. I hope yours is too. But please don't be afraid to ever get in contact with us and have a conversation, because that's what we're all about. Let's see. In that essay I gave you, I also pointed out. Here's an excerpt from it. For example, at one point in our history, here's a good, in my opinion. I know I'm sort of tooting my own horn because I wrote this shit, but this was my best purview that people could relate to as far as freedom, a view of freedom. At one point in our history, in American history, white Americans had the quote freedom to own black people. This was decided to be immoral by the more intelligent and educated of the people. These people then used their moral intellect and to influence many of the citizens. The citizens then voted and took away the quote freedom of all people to own other people as property, which in turn gave even more people freedom. Would you agree with that, Josh?
I do.
I would hope so, man. Because if you went the other way on that one, we were gonna have a talk.
I do agree with you
Because if
wholeheartedly,
you
100%.
disagree that it and you think it is somehow moral, not immoral, but moral, like it's okay for anyone to own another human being as property, it is my opinion that you're a piece of shit.
Yeah, not on my worst day.
Yeah, that's fucked up. And if you do think that, maybe call in, but at your own discretion, because I'm gonna hurt you on that one a little bit, verbally, not a threat, not a physical threat, not a physical threat, but you're gonna get an earful. All right. So, but that is a good example of how taking away someone's freedom actually made everyone more free, because you are no longer allowed to own a person as property, nor are they allowed to own you as property. And that makes sense. I mean, you look at most religions out there have some version of a golden rule. Even if you don't prescribe to a religion, most people can agree on the golden rule, which is, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Most people can agree with that, because I mean that's just generally a moral concept.
Should just be basic human decency.
Right. Now there are people out there who have a hard time practicing that. Me is one of them. I understand. Sometimes we all struggle with that, but it's still a good moral objective, basically. So most people can agree with that, and I don't think anyone would have someone own them. I wouldn't. Now, I mean, all right, you got some kinky crowd people in there, but like all the time, like for good, nah, like I definitely do not want to be enslaved, nor do I want to enslave anyone. I think anybody with a moral foundation at all could agree with that.
Yeah, agree with that too.
So, Josh, let me ask you. All right, so we've been sticking to a lot of. I don't want people to get too wrapped up with. They may feel I'm getting really political in some of this, and I am in some cases. I understand that, and you don't have to agree with my politics, right? But you can talk to me about them. That's fine. I'm open to that discussion. Because if you don't talk about things, I know people like to say, well, that's something we just don't talk about. And that's the problem.
You
Because
don't talk about
you're a steel trap. Your mind's set. You already made your mind up. And there's no concept in your head that says, hey, I could be wrong about this. There's plenty of that in my head. I could be wrong about everything I say. I don't know. Except for, things that are objective truths and based in fact. However, my mind is open to change given evidence, like I said. But like I said, I don't want to stick too hard to just the political stuff. I want you to get some other stuff out of the show. So I'm gonna let Josh talk a little bit. I want you to tell me what is your best definition of freedom? How would Josh Lutz, how would you personally, just you, define it? And you can give me more than 4 different things if you want to. How about that?
Oh man, whew, that should be another episode.
Well, it could be.
My definition of freedom,
Yeah.
according to Dutch.
Yeah, Dutch. Free us, mate.
I think that my definition of freedom would be the ability to live your life in a good way without fear, in a good way according to you, a moral
Okay.
way, a positive way, without fear of any kind of retribution or impingement from any other party. Now, yeah, you would have to live within the limits of the law. You can't be Robin Hood, rob banks to feed the homeless, much as, that does have an appeal sometimes. But
Hmm.
I guess that if I can lay my head down at night and sleep knowing that I made a difference, that's a feeling of freedom. I had the freedom and the ability to change something without constraint, without any
Dig it.
kind of impedance or anything like that. I did it the right way. And I did it not for myself, but for the welfare of others. Not necessarily excluding myself,
Right. You
but
just
if I
did it
can do something
your way, which made it better for everyone else. Yeah.
right, if I
For the most part, I would agree with you on that one. You know, it's my objective, generally, to leave the world a little bit better place than I found it.
yeah, exactly.
Um, Now the Robin Hood thing, that's an interesting thought. I like how you threw that in there.
I mean,
What are your
there's
all right? So hold on. That leads to a question. Um, Morally and ethically, what are your thoughts on the Robin Hood situation?
the Robin. Would it? It wouldn't necessarily be a paradox, but we can call it a theory,
A hypothesis?
a hypothesis. There you go. That's the
Right.
word I was looking for. Morally, theft is wrong. Taking from anybody what is not yours is wrong. It's wrong in the eyes of the law. It's wrong in my eyes as a matter of principle. That's just not the right way to do things.
Okay. Okay. Let me stop you there. Well, I generally agree with that statement. All right. Let's say Well, all right. For example, Dutch, you ain't got no kids that you know of, right?
Right.
At least that we know of.
At least if you know it, man. If there's a little 3-year-old with a long flowing red beard running around, I don't know it.
All right, but all right. So let's give this hypothetical, seeing as how you don't have any children. Let's say you did. Okay. You're in a situation. You and your kid are all each other have. Your kid is young and cannot fend for him or herself. And you have no money, you have no home, you're homeless. You're walking down the street past, let's say, a hot dog stand. Okay, your kid hadn't eaten in 2.5 days, and is getting weary, and you're both about to die. Are you still in that hot dog?
See, that's gonna delve into the ethics question.
Yeah.
Morally it's wrong.
Is it?
Ethically,
Is it? Is it? All right. See, morally, let's think about it. Morally, which is more morally wrong here? Letting the kid die from starvation or stealing the hot dog?
I see your point. I see your point. Yeah.
See, that's sort of the God, what was the French name? I think it was French name for a movie about stealing a loaf of bread. I actually watched it in ethics class a while back.
I know what you're talking about, but I can't
Les
remember.
Miserables. Les Miserables.
Miserables.
That's
Jesus Christ, how did I not get that?
it took me a minute. It's been a while.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean that's sort of the same premise there. But all right, I mean but in this situation, it is your kid. Now, here's the other thing. Let's say, okay, you steal the hot dog, okay, to feed you and your kid. Or actually, not even to feed you, just your kid. You don't even eat any of it, right? You just feed the kid so they don't die. But you get caught. You get arrested. Let's say in this hypothetical world, this is like a super serious crime like murder or something. Like you're going to life in prison for stealing this hot dog, which is a pretty messed up world I don't want to live in.
Must have been a Nathan's.
It's a Pulliam's dog from Winston, man. So anyway, everybody's all pissed off about this ballpark, Frank, and you are tried and convicted for this. Now, was it worth it?
In my eyes,
Is it do you deserve the punishment? Life in prison.
no.
All right. Now most people would say that. Now let me lower the bar. Given that situation, let's think about it. Given that situation, let's say you are hit with a $100 fine. Okay, that doesn't sound too bad. But remember, you're already poor. You have no money. You had to steal the hot dog just to feed your kid who was going to die otherwise. Is that morally right? To slap on $100 fine, which if he doesn't pay, you're going to slap on another lawsuit until it gets to something to that level, which is what our system currently is kind of set up to do.
Yeah.
Favoring one group of people, seemingly, or class. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts is still, in my eyes, the punishment doesn't fit the crime.
Okay, so, but that's kind of counterintuitive as to what you were saying earlier, right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you: you still stealing that hot dog?
Fuck yeah.
Exactly, right. So everybody can be Robin Hood, right? And so it's sort of like everybody has that. Because while I agree, it is immoral to steal from someone else. If doing it is for
the greater good,
a greater or a greater problem, like if not doing it is more immoral or unethical than committing the crime, then is it still a crime? Or should it still be a crime? I'm not sure. That's a gray area there. I'm open to some comments on that one because I actually don't know. I don't know.
Absolutely. Please. Please.
No. But yeah, I dig your ideas on freedom, Dutch. Since we're talking about, I guess, the justice system and governance and all that here in the US. No, I'm not trying to get, well, you can't do that without getting political because our politics is what makes our laws, I mean, I'm sorry, that's just how it works. I mean,
it's the ruling body.
I'm not putting in I guess biased political argument. I'm just asking a question on that may be political. What are your thoughts about our current justice system? And what are some problems you see in it? How about that?
Our current justice system?
Yes. Like even locally, you can go here in the county we're in. I don't know if we should mention that, but whatever.
It's all right. We don't have to mention names because everybody knows a county like ours.
Actually, we're in different counties. I just thought,
yeah. Well, still kind of the same when you think about it.
Right. We're in the same state.
Mine maybe a little worse than yours, but
I don't know about that, dude.
It's still a little bit of everything.
I don't know about that.
So, on the local level, the justice system, as far as I can tell, is flawed. It's flawed on a federal level too. Don't get me wrong. But just on a local level, what I see every day. I live in a county with a good old boys club.
Okay. I know you did that to escape defining it, but I really gotta ask, man. All right, so what you're referencing there, so you don't have to go there. I'll go there for you a little bit, or try to.
No, I'll go there.
Tell me if I'm wrong. All right.
Okay.
So, like a niche, a clique, a group that is looking out for each other, not everyone outside of it.
Favorites.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, gotcha. Go ahead.
Favorites. They're always the ones that get the raises, the promotions, to this, to that, the other. Daddy's doing something higher up. Mama's this and uncle's this and that and the other. The golden children, the ones that can do no wrong, even though they are fundamentally fucking retarded.
Well,
now I'm not going to.
I don't know if we're saying that word, but
that. Yeah, okay. Fundamentally fucking mentally challenged. How's that? Mental midgets. Mental small people.
They are fundamentally dissonant. How about that?
There you go. God bless. I'm glad you know all these big words that keep my ass out of trouble. So, yeah, it's just they play favorites. The system plays favorites where I live.
And now, here's a question about that. Is the favorites always a certain... How would you define the favorites group? Is there something that connects them or makes them... that group is the favorites, like an ethnical thing or a class thing, something along those lines?
It's a class thing. It's a status.
Is it only a class thing?
The majority of it is. Very, very few individuals in the system where I live have I seen come up through their own merit. It's always either somebody knows something, or somebody paid somebody, or somebody, somebody just kissed a little more ass than most. I can't.
So you're saying that you've never seen an ethnic bias in all this, though?
There's somewhat of an ethnic bias here.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Maybe more prevalent in your county than mine. But when I first moved here, holy shit. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it was bad. It's getting better. But
Dutch lives with the whitest among us.
it's you can tell it's very heavily influenced by old values, if you will.
All right. Question there.
Hmm.
Define old values.
White is right.
Oh, so bullshit values.
Yes,
Ah, gotcha.
rampant bullshit. And I'm
Oh,
not trying to hang myself by saying all.
now we got somebody pissed off. I guarantee it. Go ahead.
I'm not trying to hang myself by saying all this. I'm just calling the way I see.
That's right.
And you can hide under a rock and look the other way, like a lot of they do.
Hey, Dutch, go ahead and say it, brother. Go ahead and say it. I've told him enough. You could disagree with him.
You just be wrong.
That's right. Now we got somebody out there seething. Contact us. Remember, we'll talk to you. It's cool.
Oh yeah.
It's cool.
Oh yeah.
It's cool, man. We can talk about it. We can work it out. We can work it out, hopefully, and both learn something and be a little bit more free. Yeah. But so that is an interesting problem we have. So is that, and this is all in a system that's called the justice system, which is supposed to enforce laws that are supposed to give us more freedom, and we have shown how that can work, and it does to some extent, right? Like as far as a law against murder is something that I'm pretty sure most people can get on board with, right?
Right.
And then we have certain ones that just that people have a hard time agreeing upon, and usually it's due to something else I mentioned in the essay. Now, let's see if I can find that. Sorry, I know I'm a little slow here. There we go. It was in the last bit there. People who are generally, we have three sets here: disinformed, misinformed, and for many, as I say at the end of this, devastatingly uninformed. Now, when I say uninformed, I don't mean uninformed necessarily of their own volition. So people are busy. People work. You and I have jobs. We don't have time to do all kinds of research all the time, although we do make time for abstract thought and research on things that we care about, right? Such as this. And but when you live in a society where your votes or your decisions, for that matter, let's put it that way, your decisions have an effect, a direct effect on others, you have a duty built in. You have a due diligence to stay at least somewhat informed on at least what you are making a decision about. Otherwise, it is imperative that you're not the one making the decisions. Would you agree with that, Josh?
I would.
Does that make sense? Was that clear?
It was.
Okay. So while we can disagree, being uninformed shouldn't, and like I say, I understand people are busy, and I understand that that a lot of people are impinging on your freedoms by keeping you uninformed, by giving you menial tasks so that you don't have time to become informed. And that's not by mistake, in my opinion. Now, I won't point out who I think that is. It's a discussion for another time. However, then you have the misinformed people who are gobbling up bullshit. And it's always, what's strange to me is the projection game with some folks. Like projection being like, look, like if I walked up and stole a hot dog off of that cart I was talking with Josh about earlier and was like, Josh, why'd you steal that hot dog? Like, I did it, right? It's me projecting on him. Okay. So there's that, because then you have people who are like, "Oh, the media is such bullshit. They're lying to us," and all this, and some of them, yes, but generally, not all the time, not all, but a vast majority of the people that I have associated or talked with, anyway, of the people that I know, are exactly those people who are listening to bullshit and have no facts or evidence to back up hardly anything they say, and it's all based on an emotion or cult-like mentality that seems troubling. So that's then you have the disinformed. This one is not your fault. Disinformation is when someone deceives you or lies to you outright. Like, hey Josh, um, what is your favorite conspiracy there about Kennedy?
Oh, Kennedy shot first.
Right. Now, some people might listen to that if they've never heard of this, right? Like let's say they're from another country and never studied American history at all. They have no clue. They're going to hear that and be like, holy shit, really? No, Kennedy didn't. In
And
reality,
I'm
no.
really gonna feel bad.
No. You're good. You're good. I ain't shitting on you for it. It's still funny. It's funny if you know about it, right? So
Right.
this is the reason it's important to do your due diligence and become informed. You know, when we talk about conspiracy theories and like Kennedy shooting first or lizard people, we're joking and it's funny to us because we know better and we are informed and we're not suffering from some dissonance and cult-like mentality and listening to bullshit like
Now we may be poking fun at people,
yeah.
but we know better. It's all in good fun.
Right. Like I say, you can disagree with me and we can talk about it, please. Like I say, all right. I know we hit that political button, but like I say, we're talking about freedom here. Politics and laws is what gives and takes on this freedom thing. So it's something that couldn't be avoided in this episode. I'm sorry.
Right.
Sorry, not sorry. um, now, how about this, Josh? What do you think? What, in your opinion, would make more people, or what could we do to make or give more people freedom in our society today?
Mm. Oh my goodness.
That's an
Now,
episode right there.
now, are you talking about to give them freedom or to make them feel more free?
No. To, again, freedom pointing to objective truths. And not saying that freedom is objective here because it is subjective, but to make more people objectively, I guess, free, like making more people more free, if that makes sense. Like basically like when we got rid of slavery, like I was talking about before, they gave a lot more people freedom because not only were the white people free, the black people and everyone else is free too, right? Well, and then you had Jim Crow and all that shit. I understand, but I'm saying it was a progression, right? You had to civil rights movement gave a lot more people freedom, you know.
Yeah, I don't.
It's a
I
tough
really,
one.
I really don't know how to answer that. The one thing that pops into my head is the ongoing debate about legalizing marijuana.
Okay, that's a good one.
Now, well, it's kind of both. It lets people feel more free because they're free to, to whatever. And then, you got people serving multi-year sentences for a small amount of possession they may be using for pain relief because they have a chronic injury or a chronic, debilitating illness. They can't afford the medication or they don't have the insurance
Right,
at all.
and all of those people would then be free.
Right.
Who were not, right?
Right. Now, I'm not talking about, 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds of pot at your house.
Question:
Yeah.
what's wrong with that?
Well, that means you're going to sell it. And if you're selling without a license,
What's wrong with that?
well, certain laws you have to go through
Currently, right?
currently.
See, laws don't only give freedom; they inhibit it as well. Or they impinge
That's very true.
on your
Very
freedoms
true.
as well.
It is the laws are the framework of the
It's
freedom.
kind of like, all right. I've always wondered why prostitution was illegal. So, like you meant selling's legal with most things. Sex is legal as long as it's consensual and you're not being a fucking weirdo. Why isn't selling sex legal? I don't see a problem. I understand people have a moral problem with it. I don't. I would say that there'd be a lot, I guess, people who are less stressed out there. And people argue about the sex trafficking. Now, that's a problem. I agree there should be laws against, literally owning other human beings, like I was saying before, like
I
buying and
agree.
selling sex slaves and
I
shit
agree.
like that. That's not cool. But
Or any
as far as you or me making a decision what I want to do with my body, having that autonomy, I think that should be my freedom and your freedom to do the same. I see no way that impinges or infringes on anyone else's freedoms because no one's making you buy a hooker.
That's true.
Like, and if you are indeed in a relationship where you care about the other person, as I am, I wouldn't recommend it.
No, no, that's going to get real violent, real dangerous, real fast.
No shit. All right. So, but like I said, that's just an example I had. But like selling, like having let's say selling pots or pot becomes legal or marijuana becomes legal. Okay. If it's legal, I see no difference in having 100 pounds of pot in your inventory than say the paint store having 100 gallons of paint in their inventory, right, of different colors, right? So
I guess what it comes down to is if you legalize it, you'd have to regulate it.
well, I would say there's a few states already doing that, and they seem to be doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, because if you regulate it, you can tax it.
Bingo.
It's all about money.
Well,
That's a
and
question.
how about that limitation of freedom right there?
Yeah, that was going to be my question.
What's your question?
Um, how big a part do you think that money plays in the freedoms we enjoy and the limitations on them?
Hugely. I would say it is definitely not the only, but it is definitely, if not a very major contributor to the problem. But I see it both ways. Like, so if you don't think money's important, try to live without it. I do. Not really. I could have it way worse. And
Oh
but see that's also people in marketing aren't stupid. These rich folks aren't stupid. They're playing this against you because people get half of things sometimes. And stranger, they have a settler's mentality that we've talked about before. Like, oh, things could be so much worse, and they stop there, and they're not wrong. They're not wrong, but they're not complete in that thought, right? Sure, things could always be a lot worse, and you hear that all the time from people who are either manipulating you into thinking just that and trying to get you to settle for something, or people who actually believe that and are just saying that because that's all they've ever heard and that's all they know, but they never have completed the other side of that thought, which is things could also be a hell of a lot better. They could always be better, right?
always
Things could always be worse, but things could also be better, always be better, right?
agreed.
So that settling mentality, I think, plays a role in it as well, and also people's bias, their dissonance, and general problems with self evaluation, such as people suffering from Dunning Kruger effect and things like that, I mentioned before, seem to have a lot of trouble with this. So, um, Now, granted though, like everybody, all I'm saying here, while I understand things could be worse, I'm not saying that they couldn't. I'm agreeing with you. I'm just adding on to that and saying things could also be better. Which do you want to strive for? I'm striving for things to be better. I'm striving to leave the world a little bit better place than I found it. And I may not always know how to go about that or be right about how I'm going about that. But I'm at least open to talking about it with people.
Hell yeah.
I hope you guys are too.
Hell yeah.
So Josh, tell me. Here's an interesting thought experiment that someone asked me a while back. About that definition of freedom about I don't want to screw this up. It was the third one on the list here. It was the state of not being imprisoned or enslaved. Right? You follow?
Right.
State of not being imprisoned or enslaved. Now, while there isn't I call it an illusion, but it's not completely. It has some objectivity to it. You work a job that pays barely enough to live on, sometimes not enough to live on. Is that not a state of imprisonment or enslavement? Now, a lot of people say, well, hell no, because you can choose to quit. Right. But let's say that's the only type of job there is around you or that you are qualified for, supposedly.
I think some people would call that willful enslavement.
Willful enslavement. But do you have, is it willful? Because do you have a decision to make there? Do you have a choice? Really? Now, of course, yeah, you have, some people would argue, you have the choice to quit. You have the choice to just not work there. Right. But it's kind of hard to do if you want to fucking eat. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. I guess it's a matter of perspective. Some people can say, well, you can go over here and look for a job. You can go over here and look for a job. It's kind of hard to do that when you don't have a vehicle or gas to put in it.
Right. And if you don't have a job and no money, it's hard to get all of that shit. Right.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, it's like not. I don't want to compare it to slavery because it ain't. It's sort of imprisonment light, if you will.
What about indentured
societal imprisonment?
Societal imprisonment.
Now, a lot of people are like, I can hear the right wingers through my headset right now who are going to be screaming out,
I told you,
fucking socialist. Listen, I'm not a socialist. I tend to agree with a lot of democratic socialists, which is not a socialist. I know the political thing. Do me a favor, everybody who has a problem with the left being socialist, go out and figure out what the fuck a socialist is. Learn how to define socialism. Because let me let you in on a little secret here. Hitler and the Nazis were not socialists. They put that in the name to distract you from the fact that they were fascists. All right. Sorry, that was a separate point. I had to make it. But,
no, you're fine.
But back to societal imprisonment of having to work a class job. And let's see. All right, so you're in that situation, right? And you have kids. You don't have a lot of money, so you can't afford for them to have that high class, highfalutin education. And they end up about the same place you are, right? Don't travel very far. You might have one or two, but as far as a mass flow of things getting better or worse, it doesn't happen that much, right? The haves have and the have-nots have nots, right?
Right.
So what are your thoughts on that? What is your opinion? Do you agree or disagree?
I agree. I can also feel the disturbance in the force from a lot of people going, that's not imprisonment at all.
Well, that's fine. Tell me about it, please.
Yeah.
I'm open to hearing it.
It's not imprisonment in the way you're thinking, but it is a type.
Right. Just like there are multiple definitions of freedom, there are also multiple definitions of imprisonment or enslavement.
Right.
Like, For example, all right, there's a perfect example of that. We were talking about the civil rights movement earlier and how that gave more people freedom, right?
Yep.
Okay. How did it make people more free? They were already not slaves anymore after the Civil War, right? Lincoln freed the slaves, but they were still Jim Crow laws and all that, separate toilets, separate facilities, had to sit on the back of the bus, all that stupid bullshit that, followed, and a whole bunch of monuments that came along way after the Civil War that people were trying to attribute to history to try to remind certain group of folks where they came from, which is bullshit. Oh, sorry. but but I think even the people who disagree with that statement can agree that civil rights movement gave a lot more people more freedom.
Oh yeah.
Okay, because you have all right, you have people who can go in, let's say Greensboro, North Carolina, where you had to sit in. You familiar with that?
Oh yeah. At the Woolworths.
Yep. Guess what? Nobody's pulling any shit like that now. No matter what ethnicity, or some people call it race, whatever ethnicity you are, race you are, which we're all one race, by the way, with the human race, but we have different ethnicities, which I don't subscribe to. No matter what ethnicity you are, you can walk into any establishment now in America, and you should be treated fairly and be at least able to fucking eat without bullshit going on. Unfortunately, though, there are still assholes out there, but it's not against the damn law anymore. Anyway, they can't
Right.
arrest you for going and trying to have a burger.
Right.
You know. So I think most people can agree with that. I'm sure there's a lot that don't. And for those people, you can disagree with me. You would just be wrong. So it's sort of like that. If you, it's my thoughts that there's a way to be a more perfect union, to be more free, but it's going to take a little bit more open mindedness than spouting off something or hating something that you don't know what it is to start with and have not looked it up or defined it. As far like currently, there's a lot of people thinking that one of the political parties is going like completely socialist, which they're not. They're not. All right, let's look at it like this. All right, we're a quasi-socialist society anyway, and I can prove it. We're not purely capitalist. If we were, we would have failed a long time ago. I have nothing against capitalism. I have nothing except for pure capitalism or pure anything for that matter, pure any system. So here's an example. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, the VA are all examples of what you guys are calling socialism. You don't bitch about any of those. Our money, our tax money, go and pay for the roads that we all drive on. Is that socialism? Because that's as socialist as what we're talking about. Which is more important? Taking that money that we all pay in and maybe giving everybody, I don't know, health care? Seems a little more important than roads to drive on for people who half the people can't even afford a fucking car to start with, right? That's
Right.
that's just my opinion. You can disagree with that. Let me know what you think. Josh, what do you think?
I believe that too. I do. It just
All right, go ahead, man. Don't be scared.
in order for this country to be a more perfect union, we're gonna have to get rid of a lot of that dissonance.
Yeah.
A lot more people who are critical thinkers, educated. Uh, I don't know. I don't know.
I don't either, man. It's something that we all must strive for together.
Exactly.
And currently, the state of the union, as they say, scares the shit out of me. Scares the shit out of me. Um, don't get me wrong. We are. It's still strong as compared to what it has been in the past. But it is nowhere near where it should be given what we know,
Right.
in my opinion.
Well, I agree with you.
All right,
Believe the
brother.
same thing.
So that's freedom, ladies and gentlemen. Be free. Be free. All right, guys. I think this is a good place to wrap it up. We're going to wrap it up this time with a thought of what can we do to make the world a freer place? Or what are your thoughts on things we've said? What do you disagree with? We're not going to, harass you or go crazy. If you say your opinion, just, get in contact with us. Josh, how can they contact us, brother?
Contact us on Facebook. Find our page, The Root of All Stuff. Contact us at Gmail at The Root of All Stuff. That's one word at gmail.com. Where you can call, leave a voicemail, or text the Root line at 980-355-9137.
All right. Yeah. Get in contact with us, guys. We're open. Don't forget you can also text that number or leave a voicemail. We're open to any dialogue you guys want to hear. Hey, if you have any suggestions for topics on shows, something you want to hear about, something you want to get to the root of, don't be afraid to, put in your compliments or not compliments, comments. Compliments are nice too.
Yeah.
Although I doubt it after this.
Right.
But that's all right. Even comments that are, not in agreement with us, that's fine. We're open to that. Send it in. Again, I understand a lot of people are like, this shit's getting way too political. Yeah, but if we don't talk about politics at all, how can we talk about freedom? Because how are laws made? Politics. Come on, guys. It's a discussion we all have to have if we truly want to be a more free nation or world, for that matter. So, with that being said, if there's any other topics you want us to go into, so it doesn't matter. We're open to any and everything. Please get in contact with us, and that'll do it for us tonight. Josh, you let it in. I'll let you lead it out, brother. Tell everybody bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want you to remember that some people want to watch the world learn, and you've been listening to two of them. Have a great evening. Stay safe. And remember, we love you, even if other people don't.
That's right.